In April 2003, filmmaker Joshua Faudem, along with producers Jack Baxter and French Strauss Baxter, began to film a documentary about Mike's Place, a live music bar by the Tel Aviv beach. Things took a tragic turn when a suicide bombing took place at the bar, killing 3 people and injuring dozens. Today, 12 years later, a new graphic novel takes a look at the events. Daniel Campos has more.
Mike's Place, a venue that many people can relate to. After all, every small city in the United States or the UK has a similar bar with friendly people and live music. But the context of a bar like this, located in Israel at the height of the Al-Aqsa Intifada, inspired a group of filmmakers to create a documentary showing the other face of the Middle East. So the filming began in April of 2003. A good year to show that there's more to the region than seemingly endless war and terrorism. Music, romance, tourists visiting from different countries, people having a good time. The first 2 weeks of shooting presented a different side of life, often unmentioned in the media. But suddenly, everything became a nightmare.
No, they're gonna kill people. How can they do that?
When a suicide bombing by 2 British terrorists who entered Israel through the Gaza Strip would change the lives of many people and would also affect the lives of the filmmakers and the characters in the film. The deadly victims were 24-year-old Ran Baron, 29-year-old Dominique Caroline Haas from France, and 46-year-old Yanai Weiss from Holon. Among the injured was the film producer Jack Baxter. Faudem continued filming half a year after the events and released the film in 2005 under the title Blues by the Beach. The movie had a therapeutic role in the filmmaker's life.
My psychologist told me to write down what happened. I would always say that my movie is a trauma, and now the book 10 years after is an artistic reflection.
Now it's time for a different approach on the story, to be released on a different medium, a graphic novel.
The movie was made out of stress and trauma, like verite cinema. And the book was written with an editor. It's more artistic, and it tells a story about the terror attack through the love story. The movie wasn't this. The movie was chaotic.
Mike's Place, a true story of love, blues, and terror in Tel Aviv, was illustrated by famous New York-based cartoonist and illustrator Koren Shadmi. The book is being released around the world and being translated into different languages. Starting with English, French, Czech, and German, we can be assured that the story of Mike's Place will remain in the surface even years after the tragedy took place.
Joining us now from New York is the book's illustrator, Koren Shadmi. Hi, Koren. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for hosting me at I-24 News.
So, what made the story particularly fascinating for you?
Well, the interesting thing about Mike's Place is that the 2 authors of the book were actually making a documentary about the bar while this thing was happening. So basically they had, the author, Jack Baxter, came to Israel to make a documentary about Baraguti, who was, prominent leader in Israel for the Palestinians. And he found out that someone was already making a documentary about him. So he decided to make a documentary about the bar Mike's Place, which is kind of a melting pot of everybody in Israel. And while he was making the documentary, the attack happened. So it's kind of a first-person account of, finding out about this place, this kind of microcosm that represents Israel, and then having everything be disrupted. So it's a true story, and it's a personal account, and I think that's what makes it interesting, because it's the personal angle.
Right. Now, what was the process of working on the book like for you? Was it emotional?
It got difficult at times because when you work on a graphic novel, you get very deeply involved in it. You're constantly thinking about the situation, and you're kind of putting yourself in there, and it becomes almost like you're experiencing it a little bit, even though you haven't been there.
Right, and you haven't been there at the time, but you were born in Israel. Now, working on a project like this, do you fear being typecast in a way?
Yes, there is. I mean, you really don't want to get typecast as, or I at least don't want to get typecast as the artist who just does Israeli-Palestinian related stories because I'm from Israel, and I do a lot of other things, and I have had other books published in France and across the world, and they're not very political usually, and I can't say I'm a super political person, but I do take interest in it. And this summer, I went to Israel during the war, and it was very, very fascinating to see what was happening, and like the world's reaction to the war, and the kind of conflicting reactions that people had across the world, and it got me really sucked into it.
Yeah, as it does to people. But tell me, how do you choose the style to use in a project like this?
People have mentioned to me that my style is a little bit like manga, which is Japanese comics, but I think it's a pretty realistic look, which I think is important for a story like this, which is kind of a documentary. It is kind of grounded in reality, and it's very much, true story, and in a little bit of a sad one, or a lot. And and then that kind of directed me towards that look.
Right. Well, the result is beautiful. Thank you so much, Koren.
Thank you for listening and watching, and I hope you enjoy Mike's Place, which is coming out, I believe, very soon in France.
I'm sure we will. Now to Doc Aviv, the